What is up, everybody? Welcome to the first episode of Books and Buds Book Club. Instead of doing a huge review on every book that I read, which of course I will do a review at the end of this one overall, comparing it to the movie, because I really want to do some more kind of analytics on that. But I felt like while I'm reading this, why not make a little book club? So this first part, we'll go through chapters 1 through 5, and I'll briefly go over the introduction. Go ahead and grab your coffee. I got mine right here. A little Mocha Joe's. If you're anywhere in Washington, maybe you've heard of Mocha Joe's. They're pretty good. And then get your joint, everybody. I'm smoking some Trainwreck in this nice king size, if you can see that pretty well, king sized watermelon paper. What is that? Oh, it roll very well. The roller that I have is kind of wonky for king size. It makes this shape, so sometimes it's like it's all gunked up. But let's light up, boys and girls and ladies and you know what? No genders. Let's light up, book lovers. Woo! It's not bad. It's not bad. So first, let's talk about the intro. Now, I don't think the intro is necessary, and you don't have to read it, and Orson Scott Card actually agrees with it in the introduction. He says, if you don't want to read it, he's not going to stand in your way, and he actually agrees with you. It was written, I think, about 6 years after the book was published. I think they were redoing a hardcover or something. It's there in the introduction, and I would recommend, give it a little read. It's fun, but really there's only one quote I want to kind of take away from that, because it's one I always really liked. Don't let your joint go out. Human beings may be miserable specimens in the main, but we can learn, and through learning, become decent people. Now, I think that quote is wonderful, because really it's true. I am someone that thinks that higher education is very important, or just education in general. Reading books, just challenging yourself more. You don't have to go to school to get that, but typically you get it from school, and you get it from learning, and learning to become a decent person takes work. And so it's something that I really like from that. Going into this book, and it paints a really interesting idea to kind of think of that. Think that people are miserable and they can learn to become decent people. And he's saying that as an introduction into Ender's Game. Does it play a big role in it? I don't know. Let's get up into it. Chapter 1, third. Every chapter that I read so far that has the government official speaking at the beginning is really telling. You really get a sense that they control everything and that they care about him in some sense, but the care is very misguided, and it's very dangerous. I'll read a little excerpt of the start of that chapter. The one, or as close as we're going to get. Which I also like that he's not the one, or maybe he is, maybe he isn't. That's the whole idea, is that they don't know, but they are going to, they're sure well going to try their best to make sure he is the one, and push him or break him. Bend until it breaks, and if it breaks, then it wasn't meant to be, that kind of idea. Then it goes into their justifications. All right, we're saving the world after all. Take him. We are saving the world after all. Take him. Take him. It's a scary idea of the world that they live in. The next scene is him getting his monitor removed, and I feel like a lot of people complain about some of the things in the movie where she says, oh, it's not going to hurt, and then they rip it out, and you're like, well, geez, that would hurt. Well, he even says that it's an adult lie. Like, adults lie to make things easier for kids. And it really becomes this overarching theme, I believe, of anyone who's older than him is going to lie to him. Like, every adult lies, and it's just like commonplace. Like, it becomes again and again and again. It's just deception and not believing what they're telling you. Like, it's a common theme, even right from the very beginning. It's right there. It gives you a slight glimpse at Peter, that he's like, oh, well, I'm like him, we're gonna be friends. And he's like, no, not friends. Peter's dangerous, we're just brothers, we're family. Very, very short amount of time you learn some stuff about him and his life, and maybe the struggles he has. Kind of glazes over when the monitor gets removed that he basically almost dies because whoever was doing it kind of messed up. And it's very casual. Just gonna, oh, you could have turned his brain off forever. And then, okay, well, if he feels better, send him to class. And he goes back to class. He's 6 years old. 6 years old, and that's just normal. That is his reality. You understand this is not your world. This isn't your reality. Every norm that you fit into doesn't fit here. I think it's a cool feeling. It sets the tone right from the start, which is why I think I get so involved and so sucked into the story as it continues to develop. And then you go into the classroom, and everyone notices he doesn't have the monitor. It's a big deal. Everyone's like, ooh. And then he gets the message third. And third, then you kind of learn, is a dirty word. Parents only have 2 kids, or only allowed to have 2 kids. And he's like, the fact that I'm here means the government approved of me. Which is kind of also another big struggle of him needing to be accepted, because he doesn't fit into this society. Talking about the norms that you don't fit into. His parents had to petition or argue with the government or get special permission to even have him. They control Ender's life. His parents signed off his life before he was even born. I mean, that's a crazy idea. And then it goes into him being bullied. And I think this is a big scene that played a role in my life, as well as maybe in other people's lives, but it gets him noticed in a sense too, is that he beats the ever-living hell out of this bully and just kicks him while he's down again and again, just decimating him. This is so crazy. He's 6 years old, but again, the norm is gone. This is a different world. This isn't your world. And he feels such remorse. He sits down and cries when the bus is coming, because he's no different than Peter. He's dangerous. He had to do it. But what else was he going to do? Did he want to be bullied for the rest of his life from these people? No, he wanted to end it, and that's what he did. I just think that's a really powerful message, and he did it himself, but also just the fact that he felt so terrible about it, again, is a theme. There's a lot of themes here. A theme that I think he struggles with a lot, of doing what is considered the right thing for him, the right thing for the big picture. What is the big picture? And you see that glimpse there. I really, really like it. And then we go into chapter 2, which is called Peter. We really learn a lot more about his sister. You know, I should have looked this up before the video, but I believe it's Valentine. Or it could be Valentine. I'm not really sure on the pronunciation of it. And then Peter is his brother. Again, we have a little excerpt from the government, which I think this is a really great one. We promised gingerbread, but we eat the little bastard alive. I think that's pretty telling of what they're planning on doing with him. I feel like the brother and the sister represent the 2 sides of a coin. They are Ender. You put them together. And Graf even talks about it, that he is part his brother and part his sister, and he's just right. Goldilocks would love him. I don't know if he really truly believes that, but I think in this scene you see that, and how the compassion comes out through Valentine, how he feels about her, how, again, we have the second chapter in a row where the 6-year-old almost gets killed, strangled to death by his brother, and you know, the bitterness and all of the societal struggles, as you think, how could a 10-year-old do that to his brother, and then be so compassionate later in the very end of the chapter, and I think it's because he's 10 years old. I mean, that's a pretty compelling reason of why he acts the way he does. He doesn't know how to show emotions. It's crazy stuff. And that's really kind of all you get from this chapter. It exposes, I feel like, that the 2 sides of a coin. To me, that's what it does. And you just get an image of his brother and sister. Get ready. Remember how they are in this chapter. Then we go into chapter 3, which is Graf. The government. Bum, bum, bum. This joint is rolled terribly. So starting chapter 3, Graf, with a little government talk, lie to him. And if that doesn't work, tell him the truth. We're allowed to do that in emergencies. They're allowed to do it in emergencies. They can't tell him the truth any other time than in emergencies, and I think that is a really interesting idea, because then you know when he's coming into this, is he lying to him or is he telling the truth? Is this one of the emergencies? Is Ender responding the way they expect? They seem to know everything. Or are they lying to him? They started off from the bat, they want you to kind of be suspicious of what he's doing when he's talking to him. Because then we go into the next scene, which is them eating breakfast, doing whatever. The international fleet, someone is coming to the door, and they kind of are like taken aback because Ender's out of the program. All of the kids are out of the program. They get to have all of their kids, which is kind of an interesting idea, is that they're not having any of them taken away. It's a blessing, but is it? How do they feel about it? Really, truly, maybe it is a blessing. Then his dad calls him in after he talks to the officer for a bit, and they say, you know, someone bullied you and you attacked them. Like, they don't really know what's going on, and there's a kid in the hospital, and the government official wants to know why he did it. Why did you beat him down? And he said he was fighting back, and he said, but why did you kick him repeatedly when he was on the ground? They really kind of make him say it. And Ender, because of the way he's feeling, just admits it. He says, I didn't want to get bullied again. I took down the leader, cut off the head. The body can't move. And that's what Graf wanted. That is what he needed to know, that he could finally get past that. That was the final test. He is the one that he thought he was. You also feel a lot of control from the government in this scene, especially towards the parents, and I think it's when Graf says that he wants to go talk to Ender alone, and the dad kind of raises some concerns about that. And he says, and you really can't stop me. After he says, well, don't worry, I won't take him without him being able to say goodbye. And you really can't stop me. Well, it's a threat. I mean, he even says that you signed off on this before Ender was even born. From the moment of conception, you signed off on that. But we need him to volunteer because they need an officer. When he's talking to Ender alone, Ender refers to mom and daddy. I just don't like the language there. Just a little side note, just a little excerpt I had down there. I don't think it really plays into the story. Maybe it's just the time it was written, the language. But mom and daddy? What? Who talks like that? Anyway, Graf shares his insights about the parents, about Ender's parents and their love for him and how they feel about him. Being a third, coming from the family that they came from, their religious backgrounds, the shames, the trials and tribulations they may have endured from those families. And really, this is not our world. This isn't our norm. This is their world. And the struggles to have your religion or do something, it makes sense that people would still do it. They talk about other countries that don't follow the 3 or the 2 children rule and are sanctioned for it. So there's a lot of disagreement going on within the world, and I feel like the religious people and everything that would play a part into it. So he shares a lot of this kind of insight of why his parents might feel the way they do. They love him, but could they resent him? But they do care about him, and he really lays out this really nice, beautiful picture. And is it too beautiful? Is he lying to Ender? And that's what really struck me on this scene is you have no idea whether or not Graf's telling the truth. He took Ender out of the room. He separated from his parents, maybe because they couldn't handle the truths that he was about to tell Ender, because they didn't want to face them. Or maybe it's because he was just blatantly lying to Ender to get him to do what he wanted. I don't think we ever really know what's true in that. Maybe in the other books, maybe in different scenes, but right now, you have no idea. I think that's crazy. It's never struck me before until right now, when I was reading it. Hopefully it struck you, or maybe it does now, and you're like, what the heck? Yeah, I never thought of that. Righty stuff. That brings us into chapter 4. There's a launch. You're a monster. Thanks. Does that mean I get a raise? Just a medal. The budget isn't inexhaustible. Very interesting idea is that what they're doing, that's the end goal, saving the world. I mean, that earns a medal, right? So to break these children, to act like such monsters, to say, oh, well, he doesn't do well when people accept him. Let's isolate him because he'll thrive. He'll become a true leader if we treat him like shit and try to break him. And if he doesn't break, he's going to be the best. You're a monster. I know. Isn't it great? That's the world they live in. Again and again and again. It's slammed into you chapter after chapter that this is not your world. This is Ender's world. And this is what he's been brought up through for his whole life. I mean, he's only 6. Now he's gonna have another 10 hyper-controlled years by this government in this school. Like it's you can't ignore those scenes. You can't ignore the language and how they talk about it. It's huge. Then you come into Graf in the shuttle praising Ender for his ideas of oh, am I hanging from the ceiling? Am I hanging from the side of the wall, left or right, up or down? It's any way that you want it in gravity. He says, you're the smartest person on there. He ridicules, or not ridicules, but kind of insults the intelligence of everyone on there and says Ender's the smartest one. Then he walks away. Someone tries to mess with Ender, Ender stands up for himself, accidentally throws him across the ship, breaks his arm. Graf comes in, doesn't care, says, I told you, he's the best. Stop messing with him. We're soldiers, not kids. And again, I'm pretty sure all these kids are 6 years old, so another one just threw one across the ship and broke their arm. He doesn't give a... These are terrible role models for kids. Then after they dock into the school, Graf steps off and Ender takes time to talk to him. And basically is like, I thought you were my friend. I thought you were nice to me. You're alienating me. And he knows that he's doing it, but he doesn't really realize that why he's doing it. And Graf doesn't lead on to exactly why he's doing it, but he's just going, well, I don't know why you would think that. I'm not here to be a friend, or I don't have to be friends with a child or with children or something. The way he words it is very harsh. Just being like, who are you? You're below me. I'm here to make a soldier. I'm here to make Alexander the Great, who doesn't burn out like a supernova. I'm here to make, Caesar, who doesn't get stabbed in the back. He puts the stakes right up there and says, I'm not your friend. Deal with it. And after he leaves, one of the teacher comes and talks to Graf, and the language of that and the feeling of it shows that Graf maybe does have some remorse in the fact that, and he says, I am his friend. Seems like he genuinely has a little remorse when he's talking to the other teacher about lying to him. Maybe not, but the idea is, well, how can you really say you're his friend when you're doing what you're doing to him? I think we'll maybe see some more struggles with the characters through that. Brings us into the last chapter that we'll be doing in this episode, which is chapter 5, called Games. Again, we find Ender isolating himself completely on accident this time by going to the only bunk that was open to him, unlocking it, and programming it to himself. It normally goes to the chief officer that's elected, and so I feel like in some ways the kids could see it like, oh, power play, he's trying to say I'm the one, or other people would see it as like, well, there's always some kid messing around, touching things when they shouldn't be, messing up the program, just wait until they tell you to do it. It inadvertently creates tension with everyone else by him just doing that, completely on accident. Then he gets pointed out by Dap. Dap's their mother. And of course it makes sense for a bunch of 6-year-olds to have a mother, an older student who kind of shows them the ropes, tells them what to do. But again, he's like every older person or authority figure in this book. He's not there to be their mother. He's there to make sure they don't get lost, to make sure they don't die, to make sure they don't get hurt, but really, that's it. He tells them, if you have problems, you deal with it yourself. I'm not here to do that. But I like Dap. Dap's a good character. He's fun so far. Then there's Mick, and Mick is not really a character that shows up and really does anything. He just talks to Ender, tells him a little bit about the school, and basically tells him to conform, kiss up, and do it. And Ender's like, no, I'm not going to be like that. I'm going to do it my way. And when Ender had that reaction, I had to start asking myself, was Mick a plant? Was he part of all of this too? Did they, just tell a student to go harass him a little bit and then send him away? Will that student ever remember that, or was that student being genuine? I feel like I can't trust anyone in this book, so I don't know. The last kind of scene of them first getting there is the scene where they're going to sleep. He talks about hearing kids crying and sobbing. He starts crying. It's a very emotional scene. You really feel it because you have to remember these are 6-year-old kids. Now it's not your reality. It's not your norm. It's their world. It's their reality. It's the life that they've been brought up in. But still, at the end of the day, they're 6-year-old kids separated from their family. This is their first day. They're gonna cry. They're gonna feel this. What really hits you is what Ender does, or what Ender says at the end of the whole little section there of the nighttime area. And I'm gonna read it to you. When Dap came, his crying was over and his face dry. It was the lying face he presented to mother and father when Peter had been cruel to him, and he dared not let it show. Thank you for this, Peter, for dry eyes and silent weeping. You taught me how to hide anything I felt. More than ever, I need that now. Whew. Now, what you know about Peter and their relationship and to him thanking Peter for being able to hide what he's feeling now is pretty telling, but also the fact that he's right. He needs that. He's isolated. He needs to be tough and deal with it and do whatever he needs to do and just be calm and collected and be Ender. End people. Well, maybe not end people, but he needs to just do it. The rest of the chapter kind of goes into the beginning, shows the beginning forms of dominance from Ender, his rise to power, dealing with two different entities. One, the upperclassmen, the people who know what they're doing, and he comes into this game room type simulation thing, and they're going against each other, and he watches it for a little while. And Ender is very, 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 very smart. He is the smartest kid in the world, and he watches it for a little while and kind of picks up on some things that kids do and students do and the computer does, and things that the kids emulate from the computer and don't think for themselves, and he thinks he can exploit it, and he's right. And he challenges one to a game. Best 2 out of 3. And he goes, oh, you're ridiculous, stupid. And he makes fun of him. He eggs him on. He says, oh, you're going to lose. Don't worry. Oh, you're so scared. So he does. Loses the first game, but really Ender's just trying to get a groove. He's trying to learn it. Barely wins the second game, and then decimates them in the third game. To the point where they just kind of brush him. Ah, you're stupid. Anyone can blah, 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 blah. But then Ender walks away, and he comes back and he watches. That's the key of a good leader, a good strategist, is he makes his point, he does his thing, he leaves, and then he observes how it reacts. Oh, any pinhead can do it, But those people were trying to do what he was doing in the simulation. He made an impression with the upperclassmen as a 6-year-old coming in, playing the game for the first time ever. So that's situation one. The second one is going to be dealing with Bernard. Now, who's Bernard? Don't forget Bernard. Bernard was the one flying through the shuttle and breaking his arm. So, of course, he's got a bone to pick with Ender. He's also a big, cruel kid, Peter style, and so attracts those to him. Ender sits back and observes. And he doesn't outwardly try to get any of those ones getting picked on or any of the ones that may be on his side. He doesn't bring them in yet. He watches. He waits. He figures out which ones will come sooner, which ones will do what. And then he gets into the computer system. And he starts sending a message as God, talking about butts. I think this is just such a perfect scene when he then switches it and says it's sending it from Bernard and says, "I love your butt. Let me kiss it, Bernard." I mean, they're 6-year-olds. It's hilarious. Like, as much as you can teach a kid to be intelligent, learn military strategy, be able to use a computer, to be clever enough to come up with an insult, it takes some wit. It takes some learning to be able to be a good insulter, I suppose. And every insult in this is so childish. Worm. Oh, he looks like a worm because his butt wiggles when he walks. Whoa. Like, they're just kids. But what Enders is doing is kind of stepping it up above that. It's childish, but the way he's doing it is effective, and it does exactly what he wants. But then again, he even points it out himself. If IF wanted him out of the communication system, they would have him out of it. He's a genius, but he's not the greatest hacker in the world. He knows that they're letting him do this. This is all part of the game. And then when Bernard confronts Dap with it, Dap doesn't care. And he says he knows who it is, but he's not going to tell him. And he tells him to deal with it himself, basically saying, yeah, this is all part of the game. And again, that shows that Dap then is part of the game too. He's the communication system. He's part of all of it. Makes you think. Well, there you go, guys. That was the first episode of Books and Buds Book Club. Hopefully you guys enjoyed chapters 1 through 5 of Ender's Game. I believe we're going to be doing 6 through 10 for the next ones. I don't really know how many pages that is or anything, but just get those coming, and maybe in a week or two I'll get the next video out. Alright, have a good one, guys. Bye.